In the quiet dawn of November 4, 1983, a woman's scream tore through Kirinyaga village in Kirinyaga, Kenya. It wasn't the kind of scream that fades, it was raw, jagged, and continuous. When neighbors rushed to the source, they found Piah Njoki crawling blindly, her eyes gouged out, bloodied and brutalized, her face unrecognizable. Her husband, the man who had vowed to love and protect her, had transformed their home into a chamber of horror. Piah Njoki married Jackson Kagwai in August 1969 at Bariko Catholic Church. Over the next 14 years, she gave birth to 5 daughters, and by 1983, she was pregnant with their 6th child. As hard-working primary school teacher at Kirinyaga Primary School, Njoki was well respected and known for her quiet strength. Her husband, a former banker turned bar owner and coffee farmer, was seen as soft-spoken and industrious. But behind closed doors, their marriage was deteriorating. The primary source of conflict? Children and gender. Like many men in patriarchal rural Kenya at the time, Kagwai saw his wife's failure to produce a male heir as a personal and social humiliation. His frustration built over years, simmering into bitterness and anger. Njoki tried to leave multiple times, especially when the beatings escalated, but financial dependence, societal stigma, and threats to her life trapped her in the cycle of domestic terror. By 1983, the violence had escalated beyond anything her family or friends had imagined. Worse still, Njoki had once left home briefly, choosing to stay in Kutus after what may have been an episode of violence. To Kagwai, this act of independence was betrayal. In his twisted logic, her abandonment and continued birthing of girls confirmed a narrative of disobedience and humiliation. On that fateful morning, Kagwai returned home drunk and belligerent. He demanded to know if the child Njoki carried would, quote, finally be a son. She didn't answer. Enraged, he pinned her to the ground, sitting on her chest, as their young daughters screamed and begged him to stop. Then he shattered a glass bottle, picked the sharpest piece, and methodically gouged out both of her eyes. She survived the attack, but would never see again. Kagwai initially tried to silence neighbors, warning them not to speak out, but the attack was too horrific to hide. When arrested and later interviewed, Kagwai gave an unsettling defense. He said, "I did it with my own hands. I don't even know how the idea came to me. I loved her, but she forced me to do it." This declaration revealed both delusion and dangerous misogyny, a twisted mindset that equated control with affection and jealousy with justification. In a later interview, he elaborated, "She betrayed me. She ran away to Kutus. I was ashamed. I was angry. She disrespected me." To Kagwai Njoki's autonomy, her decision to leave home, her inability to give him a son, and her refusal to submit was betrayal. His violence, in his own view, was not just punishment, it was reclamation of control. This justification is chilling, but not uncommon in deeply patriarchal systems where women's worth is tied to obedience and reproduction. Kagwai didn't see Njoki as an equal partner. He saw her as a vessel, one that had failed him. In 1986, Kagwai was convicted of grievous bodily harm and sentenced to 7 years in prison. But what stunned the courtroom was Njoki's plea. She asked the judge to release him. Why? The answer lies in Njoki's reality. She was economically dependent on Kagwai, who had been the family's main breadwinner. Now blind, she could no longer return to her job as a teacher. Culturally, she faced immense pressure. In many traditional Kenyan communities, women are expected to endure suffering for the sake of keeping their families intact. Perhaps most powerfully, her plea came from a place of maternal sacrifice. She reportedly said that her children still needed their father. Her request for his release was not a gesture of forgiveness, it was an act of survival. To many women in her position, justice was a luxury. Feeding, clothing, and educating children came first. Njoki's plea wasn't weakness, it was an act of ultimate sacrifice. Despite her courtroom plea, the judge did not grant clemency. Kagwai received a 7-year sentence, and Njoki went on to file a civil suit, and in 1988, the High Court awarded her Shujas 900,000, a significant sum at the time, and a landmark win for women's legal rights. Her case also became symbolic. In 1985, Kenya hosted the UN World Conference on Women. Njoki's ordeal was cited by the Kenyan delegation to highlight the urgent need for legal and social reforms. That same year, the International Federation of Women Lawyers Kenya, FIDA Kenya, was born. Njoki's case became its first major advocacy campaign, laying the foundation for FIDA's decades-long work on gender justice. Despite the trauma, Piah Njoki refused to be defined by her suffering. She enrolled in Braille classes, adapted to her blindness, and later taught again. With the support of her parents, she raised all 6 of her daughters. The last child born after the attack was a girl, not the son Kagwai so desperately wanted. When Kagwai was released in 1993, he tried to reconcile. He sent his sisters, an assistant chief, and even friends to mediate. But Njoki's family firmly refused. She never saw him again. In interviews, he continued to blame her. He said her betrayal and disobedience led him to act. He never apologized. Njoki died on November 8, 2009, from diabetes complications. She lived 25 years after the attack, blind but resilient. One of her daughters died, but the rest grew into successful married women. Piah Njoki's story is not just one of pain, it is one of perseverance, sacrifice, and tragic clarity. She was a woman who lost her sight but not her vision. She rebuilt her life in darkness, raised her daughters in dignity, and lit the path for Kenya's women's rights movement, often silently, without fanfare. Yet, her tragedy also forced a nation to confront the rot within its own homes, where violence is normalized, where silence is rewarded, and where women are expected to endure for the sake of peace, family, or survival. Njoki represents the millions of women who stay for their children, who beg for mercy for their abusers even while bleeding, and who are discarded by the very systems that should protect them. And so, decades later, as femicide and spousal abuse persist in Kenya, we must confront a bitter truth. Have we truly learned from Njoki's story, or are we still blind to the suffering next door? If a woman has to plead for her attacker to be spared just so her children don't starve, what kind of justice is that? And how many women today are still living that same sentence, invisible and unheard? Let us know what you think in the comments.